It's the NBA Cup break. It's the perfect time to hear what you want me to talk about. So it's the first part of a two-part mailbag coming this week. Today, we talk Ben Mathurin's future centers, how the Pacers work in new players, and so much more. You'll get it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I covered the team for Forbes and Circle City Spin, and today it's the NBA Cup break. Quarterfinal games happening last night. The Pacers don't play till Friday, then they play Sunday, then they don't play again for a big gap of games. They only play 2 games in the next 10 days. Perfect time to zoom out. Today, we're going to talk about, I'm going to do a mailbag, the first part of it. Same with Friday. Derek Schultz is going to join us for a big picture discussion tomorrow, plus looking at center trade kind of dealios. We'll talk trade deadline next week. So much good stuff. But today we start with, as usual in these breaks, we'll do this again at All-Star, etc., a mailbag. I want to hear what you guys want me to talk about, what you're curious about, what it means for the long-term future of this team. And if you've never listened to a Locked On Pacers mailbag before, I would say I do things a little differently than some people. One is, if I put the post up and you reply to it, I'm answering your question. Every single one. I don't skip any. I have deleted the post now. I apologize for that. But 2 is, I look at them and I generally try to think how I would attack the answer, but I try not to script out, here's what I want to say to this question, even though I probably should do that. I think it's more interesting to hear how I think it through. And I came to that landing spot when I did these with Adam Friedman, the old co-host of this podcast years ago, because we would do them together, and hearing him think it through was beneficial for me. So with all that in mind, let's talk about the Pacers and a variety of topics, including Ben Mathurin, the center position, working in new players, etc. And lo and behold, what a start. Crystal Marie at Cry Marie. I'm Cry short for Crystal, so that sounds funny. 513 says, do you think we can afford to keep Mathurin and get another center if need be? Short answer, yeah, man. Yeah. I understand that the premise of these questions is a subtle at the end in parentheses, and also keep the rest of our good players, right? If the person is talking about the Pacers. And the reason that question is relevant is obviously because of their major or important players this season. Ben Mathurin is the only one who's a free agent next year, right? The Pacers free agents next summer, as of right this second, project to be Ben Mathurin, Tony Bradley, maybe Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, and maybe Cam Jones. And then Quentin Jackson obviously have his 2-way, but none of their normal rotation guys. Everybody is a minimum or less player, and then there's Ben Mathurin. And so he is the natural guy to talk the most about. He'll be very heavily featured in trade deadline discussions, mostly because of that. He's played very well this season. The Pacers should want to keep him, to be clear. And the fact that they should want to try to keep him is why this discussion gets to this point of, can they actually do it and get the rest of the stuff they need? Because right now, next season already, without having done the trade deadline, without having done the draft, without having done any extensions, anything, any free agents for next year, the Pacers are already at $181 million of guaranteed salaries for next season, where the tax line is $201 million. So they're already $20 million shy of the tax without Mathurin. So I get why this question comes up. Now, one thing that I've mentioned this once, but not enough, is people talking about the draft and getting a high pick. And yes, there are obviously logical reasons to do that. I'm not saying what I'm about to say that that's not a good idea. What I am saying is a higher pick has a higher salary, and that gets you closer again to that tax line. So I'm giving a lot of background info to say, I understand why this is a question, because I said yes at the beginning, and some people probably are like, wait, what? Because the answer is, first of all, they can, this is not a will or should, they can do anything. They have his full bird rights. They can pay Ben Mathurin whatever he wants. Can they also get a center? They'd have to use the mid-level exception. They'd have to acquire that player this current ongoing season. They'd have to do some different thing, but they could do that without making a trade of one of their current core players. That's possible. They'd be an expensive team, right? They would certainly be an expensive basketball team. The hurdle to them acquiring the team that is asking this question is just their own willingness to spend. But if Mathurin is balling and they love the center they're getting, or the center they're getting is cheap enough that they can be willing to go, $15 million over the tax, that would probably put them over the first apron next year. would they want to do that? I mean, if they believe they're a title contender with Tyrese Haliburton, they should do that, right? They should do that. So my answer to the question is yes, they can do what is being asked, right? They might have to shed like non-essential salary. And I think that's a different discussion. You can make your own determinations of who you'd consider non-essential salary for the Pacers. It will depend on what happens the rest of the season, certainly, but that is more likely to me is if they wanted to have both a good, high quality and paid like a good, high quality center on their team and have Ben Mathurin on their team beyond this year, think about the players who make probably, let's say, Isaiah Jackson and less this season, right? Look at them and say, who do the Pacers need to have and who do they not need to have among that group, and then figure things out from there. Now, the other part of that question is the question asked is, can they do so? Yeah, they can. Will they be able to do so, or will the classic restrictions of, the tax and the aprons and all that allow them to do so? That's where it gets harder. And that's why figuring out how they get their center of the future this year probably requires trading away some of their core guys who have been in their rotation a lot this year or have been, thought of highly for their potential for this team or a future pick, whatever it may be, to get that player. Or if Mathurin is traded for that player, that obviously would not have both. So there are logistical hurdles to them doing so. In fact, if you said right now, will the Pacers have what their, top 10 from last year minus Turner plus a different center next year, including a repayment of Mathurin? I'd guess no, they probably don't. They probably are missing 2 of those guys or 3 of those guys. But can they do it? Yeah, they can. If that's what you think the Pacers should do, that is a possible path for them to take. It is an expensive path for them to take, but it is a possible path for them to take. But in reality, searching for something in the middle of the expensive versus talented pairing is possible. And I think the core part of that's going to be, what do they think Ben Mathurin's free agency is going to yield? What do they learn about what his market could be outside of Indiana? Because restricted free agency does help them in this case. It's a lot of we'll see. But the other tricky part of this question, and a lot of questions on I'm talking on December 10th, is that it's December 10th. The season has been going on for less than 2 months. What I say now, and then the All-Star break could come, and it could all feel completely different and completely not important, right? So keep that in mind as well. But given what we know right now, yes, what is asked in this question is possible, and wouldn't be that hard to figure out or finagle a way for the Pacers to actually do it. Would it give them the highest quality center ever? Maybe not. Would it give them a super expensive team? Heck yes. Would it potentially give them a chance to compete for the East title next year and maybe more when Haliburton comes back? Maybe, yes. Maybe it would. And that is, of course, should be the guiding light of any decision that they make. Good question, and one that I'm sure will be thematically similar for a lot of the rest of the questions today. Next up from Zach Barnett, who I've met a million times. Zach, hello. Good to hear from you. At ZLF Barnett. This one is less about the Pacers and more about what we're about to do. It's December 10th. It's going to be December 15th on Sunday or Monday. I should know what the calendar is like. And I think trade season in the NBA starts earlier now with the way the CBA has decided that things should go and the reaggregation ability of earlier trades. So trade season's about to get going, and that's very important because the question from Zach is, with all the trade rumors circulating, who are the people we should follow who are quote-unquote plugged in? Seems like there are a ton of rumors or accounts with negative credibility. 100% agree. The number of times I see a comment on the YouTube version of this podcast or I get a tweet at me about something that is a rumor they've heard or something they've heard, which always makes me laugh in phrasing. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Drives me crazy because it's usually from nonsense. It's not from an actual reporter, or it's been completely aggregated to death in a way that is not actually what was said, or just a million things are sideways from it. So my answer to this is usually as follows. One is the obvious ones. Shams Charania, yep, you got it. Most people at The Athletic who are national are very plugged in. Jake Fisher, Mark Stein, Chris Haynes, the guys that you've ever had their notifications on, you've talked about their reports before. Yes, great. You should trust the things that they say and maybe not think of them as Bible, but very likely at least at one point are currently true. And then there are other things, like I saw one today that came from a local outlet in the Western Conference. And then you check the outlet and I go, okay, yes, they've reported on the team that it was about for a long time. Great. This is probably true, or somebody with deep-seated connection to their team, but check the outlet a lot of the times. I see a lot of this person is a TV news director. I'm like, they don't know they don't know enough people to even know how to verify this or know if this is true. But I would say most of the time, Google it again. And if the only source you're seeing is something you've never heard of or an aggregation account, it's probably not true. And it actually is infuriating to me. And now all these accounts are getting like sponsored and stuff, and they're like literal fake news breakers are getting sponsored. It's crazy to me what's going on. I read an article about that in Awful Announcing today. But the list, I should make a list, like an actual Twitter list of people that I subscribe to. Mark Steins, the Steinline, of course, Shams, Chris Haynes, those guys. They all get things. Jake Fisher's with Mark Stein. All those people have years and years and years of work that is proven to be true and stuff that they have reported. I've checked on, and yes, it's all true. Like, I believe them all to be legitimate. All the beat reporters at The Athletic, all the local people who follow teams around are generally good as well. But that is where I fall on this, and that's going to be very relevant for a lot of what we're talking about today. Coming up, much more on the Pacers' future, dumb things I've done in my career covering this team, who fits the best next to Haliburton, and so much more coming up here on Locked On Pacers. But first, everybody, let me quickly talk to you about Mint Mobile. There's no reason to let big wireless drain your wallet, especially during the holidays. Right now, Mint Mobile is running their best deal of the year. All of their unlimited plans are 50% off. That means you can lock in 3 or even 6 or 12 months of unlimited premium wireless for just $15 a month. It's the easiest way to take your overpriced phone bill and give it the full Scrooge treatment. And what makes this even better is how simple Mint makes the switch. No contracts, no nonsense, just real savings and real quality service. Switching to Mint lets you keep your same coverage for a lower price. Setup takes only a few minutes. You can bring your own phone number without any issues. The service is fast and super reliable, even on the go. Feels good knowing you're not overpaying just to stay connected. So turn your expensive wireless present into a huge wireless savings future by switching to Mint. Shop Mint Unlimited plans at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. Limited time offer, upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, and $180 for 12 months. Plan required. Taxes and fees, initial plan term only. Greater than 35 gigs. It may slow when network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage vary. See mintmobile.com for more. We are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen, fun cup night. Locked On Magic should be your second listen. They're new. Both of these teams are new to the Vegas experience in the East, but the Magic are the team without the biggest name stars or most success in the past. I think that's still left in the cup at all. They're the new fun. Here they come team. I love this about the cup. Philip Rossman-Reich, I hope he goes to Vegas. The Magic are headed to Vegas. Reminder about the Everydayer Club. First of all, if you listen every day, thank you so much. We have a new ad-free version of Locked On Pacers as a part of the Everydayer Club, an exclusive Discord you can be a part of. Check that out. It'll be in the description and or bio of this episode, depending on where you're listening. Okay, more questions. I put my phone down. All my questions are screenshots of posts. Alex Golden at Alex Golden NBA, host Setting the Pace. Hello, Alex. We've been sitting next to each other a lot of games recently. It's a good time. Has 3-parter for me. 2 of them less serious, 1 more serious about the current state of the Pacers. One is, what's the funniest answer you've gotten back when asking a question to a player or Rick Carlisle? I've gotten some bad ones. I mean, I used to. I sometimes still, I ask a question, I'm like, what? I phrased that so bad, or I said that just so terribly. A million. Every time. The one that I always think about is, I cannot remember how many years ago it was, but it was in the COVID era of the NBA, and we were doing Zoom media availability still, and Edmund Sumner was still in the Pacers, which is relevant because he's the subject of this question, not the guy I'm asking. And they played the Warriors. The Pacers beat the Golden State Warriors the night of this game, and Steph did not play well, and Sumner was guarding him for a lot of the game. And I was like, wow, I want to write about Ed right now. Anyway, I had already started a draft in a story. Let me ask Steph Curry about being guarded by Edmund Sumner. I'm trying to find this game now to see if I can remember it. It appears that it's the season after the one that I'm currently looking at. But anyway, that we're on the Zoom, and a lot of teams were doing a raise your hand and they'll call on you kind of deal for these Zooms. The Warriors were not. They were just Steph would finish answering, and then 1,000 people would just blurt out, their next question. And I got one into Steph, and I asked about Sumner's defense, and it was just horribly phrased. And Steph Curry just said, yeah, he played defense. And that's it. And I've just been like, oh, I can't believe how poorly that went. I can't use that quote for anything. It stunk. Edmund Sumner that night, 30 minutes and 38 seconds of play, 12 points, 4 rebounds. Steph Curry in the exact same game. 7 for 17 with 2 turnovers. He only had 20 points on those 17 shots. Look at Ed go. That one always sticks out in my mind. I've had a million ones that I want to mulligan on that I think are bad. But that one elicited the worst answer. And it's the funniest to me personally. Funniest ever? I don't know. I asked the question when Tyrese Haliburton got a phone call from Pat McAfee in the middle of media last year. That was pretty funny. My favorite road arena in the NBA and why is his part 2 question. Detroit, because the food is so good. The food is amazing. A lot of players will pop in for both teams to that one to grab the food. Just like a thing that happens. You just pretend they're not there and they get their food and they go back and get ready for the game. And I love Little Caesars Arena in general. It's like 2 arenas. It's like a big arena and then another arena like in it, and the concourses go all the way to the ceiling. That's really cool. I like a lot of arenas, honestly. Gamebridge is really good. Like now that I've seen a lot. Madison Square Garden it is legit. It's real. It's awesome. I would recommend going to a game there if you're ever in New York and have a way of doing so. I think those would be my top ones that I've been to. I like the hockey arenas because they're just huge and you have a lot of places you can go and a lot to explore and see and a lot of little quiet places to do work post game. But Detroit would be my first answer because they fit a lot of the criteria of the things I've just said. The actual basketball question from Alex. Fit-wise, is a lob threat / rim protector better at the 5 next to Tyrese Haliburton or a 3-point shooter rim protector? Yeah, that's a great question. It's very funny to have listened to Tyrese Haliburton, as Alex knows over the years, talk about this because he thought in Sacramento that, okay, the perfect center for me as Tyrese Haliburton is Rashawn Holmes, who doesn't really fit any of these categories. He's an okay defender at his best, but he had like this funky mid-range flip shot dealio floater going on, and he is a masterful screen setter, like as good as it gets. And for all the things I thought Miles was good at that fans did not, he was never really a good screen setter. Now, because he was pretty dynamic coming out of the screen, he still got some respect or made things happen in that environment. But when it comes to Tyrese Haliburton, he has in his eyes, come to realize that how much the shooting Miles Turner provided was helpful for him. Now, he's played with other types of centers like Rashawn Holmes and like other players on the Pacers besides Miles Turner, but he talked a lot about how that versatility and that pop ability really opened up the floor. Now, even without Haliburton's answer, my answer would be a 3-point shooter, mostly because, Nembhard, it's been there in the playoffs so many times. All the playoff story or the playoff riser stories have been written. It's happened twice in a row. Maybe it will never happen again. But for all those experiences, he has never really been a good shooter in the regular season. 33.8% for his career. He's currently at a career high, 35.8% from deep this season. We'll see where that settles in at. And Siakam is a much, much improved shooter from earlier in his career, but is also kind of like, he's fine. He's threatening. People guard him because he's Pascal Siakam more so than he's an awesome shooter. He's at 36.6% this season. So Haliburton's a good shooter, and Nesmith is a good shooter. But if you have 3 kind of shooters on the floor, or like 2 shooters and 1 complete non-shooter, in a lot of centers cases that's the case. I'm not saying your spacing will be bad. If Tyrese Haliburton, Aaron Nesmith, and Pascal Siakam are on the floor, your spacing will at worst be good, at most of the time be great. But you can see the clear benefits with that group of what a spacing center can do, and Siakam's talked about that too. Now, obviously, there's questions about Haliburton, but in general, for what the Pacers are and what most of their team projects to be, I think the shooting to go with the rim protection would be more valuable for the Pacers, which will come up a lot when we talk about centers that are available, because there's not that many great shooting bigs who are just like, yep, they're right there for the taking. Now, a lot of guys are decent shooters and things like that, but I mentioned something earlier that I want to go back to. I wonder what a good Rashawn Holmes, for the things he was good at, was not a lob threat, right? What an actual good lob threat Rashawn Holmes level screener could be. If they're a nasty, nasty screen setter, they make a ton of contact, they create space, and just doing that, if they just dive to the basket, how effective they could be, because he hasn't really played with anybody who's awesome at that. It's just merely pretty good in a lot of the cases. So it's possible that is more effective, but on a team environment perspective, or just like looking at a whole roster of people, I've always gravitated toward the shooter on this Pacers team. And, it seems like they could use a little more shooting with this group, but maybe I'm crazy. Maybe Nembhard shoots well the rest of the season and they'll have enough, and a lob guy will be fine. But the answer, as always, is Tyrese Haliburton will make everybody as good as he possibly can, and he'll play great. 2 quick rapid-fire ones that aren't as serious. Danny Cunningham from Locked On Cavs. Many of you hated the way he talked about the Cavs in the playoffs. I love Danny. He's one of my Best Media Pals tweeted at me and said, what are you going to get to eat at Harry and Izzy's when we go in for lunch in January? If you've never been to Harry and Izzy's and you're in Indy, you should try to go. It's a little pricey, but it's quite good. And I love the steak burger. It's perfect. So Danny, I'm going to get the exact same thing I got last time we went. And we ran into like a million NBA people just chilling like 5 feet away from us. So thank you, Danny, for that submittal. And Adam Aronson, who covers the Sixers, who the Pacers play on Friday, says, what do you say to the millions of Locked On Pacers listeners? LOL. Thanks, Adam. Devastated by your refusal to travel for Friday's game. Fortunately, a one-off game that was scheduled late. I can't have plans to go to, so I will not be in Philly on Friday. And we have people coming over the next day for a Friendsgiving. So, Adam, sorry. You can cover that game really well from Philly and ask all the ex-Sixers, of which there are many on the Pacers, Tony Bradley and TJ McConnell among them, ask them the hard stuff. That'll be a fun game. That will be like, to make this about the Pacers, that will be a real, like, are the Pacers actually playing better kind of game, right? Because their last stretch of 6 has been either, I mean, Cleveland's kind of been wobbly this year, but really bad teams are really good teams, right? Wizards, Bulls twice, and Kings, that's 3 awful teams. And then Cleveland is quite good, and Denver's awesome, and they lost both of those games by double digits. Philly's kind of more in the middle. You know, maybe they're closer to Cleveland than I'm giving them credit for. The record says they are. I don't believe they are. You know, if the Pacers hang with Philly and lose or win, yeah, they're probably they might be onto something with their recent play. If they just get throttled, they probably have just been cleaning up against bad teams. Couple more questions to get to here on Locked On Pacers coming up here to close this one out. Before we get to any of that, we got to talk about Game Time. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994 with 48 teams for the first time ever. It's going to be massive, but let's be honest, getting tickets is the hard part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You pull up the app. The layout makes it so simple. You scroll through the matchups, you compare the seat views, you pick a game, tap your section, boom, you can have your tickets within minutes with no confusion, no hunting for the fine print. Their seat viewer is a game changer. The fees are included up front, so there's no surprises. You can get alerts for the games you want to go to and take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets. Every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go, Game Time. And we are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen has to be Locked On Knicks. They are also headed to Vegas. These small little Knicks, look at them go. They crushed the Raptors. That game, the Raptors are making me sad. They were playing so well. It was so fun, and they have just been not very good of late. I thought this question was very interesting, and I wanted to do it. Michael Whitehead at Whitehead_31 says, there has been no shortage of transactions this season. This means just for the Pacers. This is two-parter because of that. A, what do players and coaches do to bring new guys along as quickly as possible? And this is funny timing because I actually talked and wrote a lot about this with the Fever, who did the same thing. They brought in a ton of hardship players themselves. The Fever didn't have as many situations as the Pacers, though, where they signed a guy and they literally played that day, like the day that they were signed. And it's so crazy that the Pacers have needed to do that. So a couple things matter here. They try to, when possible, right? Obviously, the day a guy is signed, they can actually like formally interact with people and meet stuff and be around. But like, you try to, when possible, if you know an opening is coming on your roster with a roster space, or like, you know, it's possible you'll get a hardship, like get ahead of it with a free agent, be like, hey, it's possible you could be on our team. And then they can look ahead at what they might be doing, how they'll fit, what players they might fit well with. That's part of it. Day one is just like a massive crash course of like, here's some plays we might run when you're in the game, and here's what our defensive coverages will be and stuff like that. But being locked into a scouting report is a key part of that player's duty for the first game. Like, just don't mess up as much as you can if you're the player. And that's what thing three is just like, I think this is a competing factor. This is something Stephanie White said about the Fever a lot that I don't know. The Pacers haven't said this, but I'd imagine to be true is the Fever really limited the playbook when they'd get new players, right? When that player or the new player would be on the floor in their first game and they'd only been on the team for a day or two, they would not have the full arsenal going. They'd say, okay, these 4 or 5 plays are probably what we'll stick to when you're in there. Odyssey, this is a Pacers show, so I'm not going to get too far. But Odyssey Sims is a point guard the Fever signed, for example, mid-season last year. And I remember their first game with her on the team, her first 2 plays were the same play, right? And it was so obviously noticeable. So I imagine / can tell the Pacers do at least something somewhat similar, but they don't call as many. I mean, they call plays, but they're more action to action than that. And so a lot of players who are good at flowing look better, right? Some guys don't look as good coming to the Pacers for a quick little 10-day experience. Like Cody Martin didn't really ever get it to click right away or click at all, really. Whereas Robinson Earl, like the way he moves in his activity just looked very good. And Matthew's shooting has kind of felt the same way. So some of it's organic and some of it is very intentional, and as much pre-planning as you can do as possible really helps. Part B of this question was, as well as the recent new guys have fit, who does most of the scouting for the team? Yeah, they have lots of there's just 2 parts to this question. There's 2 kinds of scouts, right? There's college scouts and there's pro scouts who like go to NBA games in other markets to watch other teams. So it's hard to say specifically who, if there's any one person who was like, hey, everybody, we think Jeremiah Robinson Earl would fit, right? I'm sure there's a lot that goes into it of like, he's available, he's in shape, right? He's healthy right now. He can play a position of need. Like they have to check a lot of boxes first. So here's what I suspect is, one is they do have obviously players that they'd prefer who are available because they fit into their style and they're checking on those players. I also suspect that like good agents who have lots of clients who are free agents are like, hey, Pacers, we see you have a hardship potentially becoming available. These 5 players are, maybe good fits or whatever. And then the Pacers can go, okay, well, what do we know about those guys? What do we like about those guys? Who's the best, right? That is what I would understand the process to be from just knowing how the NBA kind of works. And so that also makes it easier, is it's not just like a broad scope of like, hey, scouts, who do we like? Who's looked good in your time watching that's available? It's like, okay, well, really it's a narrower pool than, maybe not narrower than you think, but it's not quite, the pool of players is not every NBA free agent. It's guys that make sense, guys that are actually available and could do something of note for them. But that was a good question. And that's been an important thing for this team so far, that they've been able to, in some cases, have those guys look pretty good right away. Ethan Thompson looking good right away, of course, has been huge. Robinson Earl, they won the game the first night he played for the team against Golden State, right? Some of this stuff really matters for this team. Indy Pacers with a basketball emoji at WA and then a bunch of numbers. Walker says, do we want GTA still? I don't know if this is about Grand Theft Auto or about something else, but the answer, if it's about Grand Theft Auto, is yes. I would love the GTA 6 to come out because I will absolutely be playing it. I was amazed how many goofy questions I got today. A lot of them were about the future of two-way players, and a lot of them were about centers, and we'll talk more about that stuff for Friday's show, and a lot of them were about that are coming are about you guys, fans. But no one asked this for today specifically, but I do want to answer one more thing that I got a lot of questions about unrelated to this podcast. So Ethan Thompson's playing great. Like, full stop. What I'm about to say is not to diminish what he's doing. Quentin Jackson played well when he was healthy for the Pacers. I keep getting the well, they've got to open a spot to convert these guys. And already the question is should they convert Ethan right now and give him a standard? And I have to do the same thing that I do for every two-way player. And I don't mean this to say that you're dumb for asking. They're playing well. They deserve the opportunities and contracts they would get. A two-way is an NBA contract. These players are on the Pacers. In theory, you hear a lot about them playing with the G League, but that is something that can happen when the team is healthy. So there is no benefit to converting Ethan Thompson right this second. No other team can sign him. He can't just leave the Pacers all of a sudden. And so he has 39 games he's allowed to be active for the Pacers for because of when they signed him. Now he has 30, whatever that would be, less, 34 left, right? So 34 games from now, if he plays every game and he's good and all this stuff, then they would convert him. They'd say, okay, now let's cut somebody or open a roster spot in whatever way so we can sign Ethan Thompson. But doing it right now makes a little sense. Same thing with Quentin Jackson, who is a good player, who has earned the chances he's getting for the Pacers. They don't just need to cut or waive somebody now to do that. When they have Quentin Jackson on their team, and he had 50 games of eligibility and then got hurt, he has 45 more games. That wouldn't be till March. So again, they should explore these things. These are good players, but there's no need to do that now at all. And getting ahead of it, sure, it might be valuable if there's an inkling that that's something that's coming their way, but we'll see what kind of roster spot situation they have post-trade deadline. I think that will be very telling when it comes to those guys who, again, both have over 30 games of eligibility left. There's 29 games until the trade deadline. They could play Quentin Jackson and Ethan Thompson every single game until the trade deadline on their current two-way. No problems, right? So is there arguments to eventually converting them to standard deals? Yes. Should that be something they do right this second? No, they cannot just be off the Pacers. There's no reason for them to get ahead of that. They should keep all of their options open. We'll do plenty more of these. If you asked me a question and I didn't answer it, that's why I have plenty more for Friday's show. So I don't think I need any more this time. Tomorrow, we're going to mix it up, though. We're going to break up the mailbag. Derek Schultz is going to join us. We're going to talk about, there were center rumors, real reputable center rumors that came out about the Pacers on Tuesday. We'll talk about those players. We'll talk about the surging team that Derek saw in person on Monday and so much more. And then we'll get right back to games for the weekend and then right back to some fun break in the schedule stuff next week. Thank you guys so much for listening. You can find me on social media at Tony R. East and this podcast at Locked On Pacers. Have a wonderful day. We'll see ya very soon.